thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. Um, exactly. So, scale computing is already said. So, we offer a virtualization platform to eliminate your downtime. So, we want to give our customers an infrastructure that is built for resiliency, high availability, which is crucial these days. Um, I want to start with a slide that if those who know scale computing maybe saw this slide in the past, but I keep showing this slide because it is still relevant with changes in today's market dynamics. And not necessarily of the technology move, but more what happening on vendor level. So we know and we see that a lot of customers partners are looking for virtualization alternatives. And that has a lot to do with, of course, the changes are currently by Broadcom or VMware. There's still a lot of changes. So if we do a short recap in what the strategy is and was, so first they created new product groups. So we have the standard enterprise, the vSphere Foundation and Cloud Foundation. So that brought a lot of changes more than in the meantime, 1.5 year, 2 years ago. Later, they changed or they announced that ESXi version 8 is not version 9, sorry, is not anymore in the standard and enterprise, giving basically a lot of customers no option but to move to a higher segment. So they don't have a supported version in the next 2 years for the standard and enterprise version. And now, if you look at their announcement, the next version, which is 9.1, which is coming up in the future, will not be supported for vSphere Foundation. So pushing everyone to their basically most expensive cloud product. This is something that we were announcing basically 1 year ago, and that's the strategy of VMware. So their strategy is to focus on really big enterprise customers and focusing on that cloud infrastructure. So that gives a lot of customers basically a push to look for new alternatives. So scale computing is one of the solutions out there. So we focus on everything which is at the edge. So as you see on this graph, we see a big move towards edge. That has a lot to do with one of these movements is AI. So there's more and more AI, and you don't want to have everything processed into the cloud. That will be really expensive. So you need on-prem infrastructure to do some of these calculations. The second one is, of course, a lot of EMEA or European customers, they want to have on-prem infrastructure. That has probably also a lot to do with the United States president, who is changing a lot these days. And one of those things is that if a US company has a data center built in Europe, then they can have access to that. So we see a movement of a lot of our customers that really want to have and own their own on-prem infrastructure. That is where we focus. Our technology focuses on on-prem infrastructure. That can be for end customers or an MSP if you want to build your own data center that you basically also own yourself. The second part is, so not only the edge, the second part is that we focused around ease of use and simplicity. So we know that everything which is running in the cloud is built around that ease of use, that SaaS product look and feel. So that is what we try to give for our on-prem infrastructure, built around ease of use and simplicity. This is the only slide that I will show today to explain more about who we are as a company, but I think it's good to have this as a background information. So we've been around for quite some time. So our first hyperconverged infrastructure product launched in 2012. For those who are not familiar with hyperconverged, you can compare our technology or our segment with VMware, with vSAN, HP SimpliVity, Proxmox with Ceph, or Nutanix. So that is the solution that we're looking at. So meaning that you have your virtualization layer also integrating the storage layer all in one. So in the meantime, we're at version 9. We have a lot of customers worldwide. And what makes us unique is that our solution is built around ease of use and simplicity. So when we look at our customers, they win a lot of time back, so they reduce their overall cost because they improve their operational efficiency. That is the first part. So this is a story that resonates with a lot of our customers that have an IT team from 1 up till 10 people, because these are really they have a lot of time constrictions. They have a lot of things on their plate these days, so they need a platform which is really easy to manage and implement. Second part is you see big names up there like Coca-Cola, Northern Marine, Ahold. So these are our enterprise customers. However, what we offer for enterprise is basically these are all, we call them distributed enterprise customers. So they have a lot of locations. So Ahold, they have 800 stores. Coca-Cola, we're talking here about the manufacturing plants in South Africa, and Northern Marine is a shipping company with 100 ships. So what do they have in common? They have a lot of locations and only running a couple of VMs at that location on-prem at the edge. And we give them a platform which is really easy to set up, easy to manage, because we know that on a ship there's no IT knowledge. In a store there's also no IT knowledge. So that's the second part. So we have a platform for big core data center all the way to your really small edge locations. And we have a lot of partnerships that we built during these years. We have hardware partners, Lenovo, Dell, Supermicro, but also backup with Veeam, Acronis, etc. So our main product is HyperCore. So that is hyperconverged infrastructure. So again, we combine that virtualization with compute and storage, all in one solution. And we focus on 4 pillars. So first of all, that limited resources. We see that a lot of companies, if I look to the Baltics, but also to the Benelux region, basically a lot of companies are mid-market companies and they don't have an IT team bigger than 10. So, but there are a lot of tasks that they need to do these days. So we want to give them an easy platform so they can focus on what's running on top of the virtualization layer and not the virtualization layer itself. So that's the second part, get rid of that complexity. I know that a lot of vendors these days are pitching this. So that an easy platform. However, if you look at hyperconverged infrastructure solution, where you have a storage platform integrated in the total solution, a lot of these other solutions you need to do a lot of setup to make sure. So it's not like an all-in-one easy, ready-to-go platform. So it's still quite complex in these platforms. The third part is performance. So performance, you have that high available solution, but I will come later. I will focus more on that point later during the presentation. Last part is flexibility. So the name scale computing comes from that. So we can easily scale in different ways. So you can scale if you have a cluster. Let's say you have a cluster of 3 nodes, three servers. And in 2-3 years, you need an additional one. So you can easily add a fourth one. And this can be with newer CPUs, can also be a different configuration with storage and RAM requirements. So this gives you that flexibility. So you do not need exactly the same config. Because we know that with a lot of different solutions in the market, when you want to upgrade in the future, you need to have that same system, and that's not always possible. So you need probably a new product for that. Second part of scaling is multiple locations. So we see that we have a lot of customers who have more than one location, not necessarily 100 or 50, but probably sometimes 2, 3, 4 locations. They have an head office, production facility somewhere else. We can really, because it's so easy to scale and set up, they can basically have engineering in one site and set it up at a different location without even traveling to that location. Where are we a fit in the market? Because as said, a lot of customers are looking for alternatives, and I believe that every vendor is a fit for a specific use case. First of all, we have that core data center. Then we're looking towards mid-market, low enterprise customers. The second part is managed service providers, MSPs. And the third one is that distributed enterprise, having a lot of locations. You need high availability on that location, but you only have maybe one or two virtual machines. A good example of that is retail, where you have point of sale system that you want that needs high availability, and you most likely don't want to run that in cloud, for example. Um, for those who are not familiar with hyperconverged, let's start with what's basically still commonly used. So this is a traditional infrastructure. So you have, in this case, you have three systems, three servers. You have a separate storage entity, and you have virtualization running on top of these. So in this case, let's say most likely that will be a VMware running probably maybe on Dell, HP servers. Then you have networking and you have storage. The thing about this infrastructure is you need a lot of knowledge to manage this. You need at least knowledge of five different vendors. You need to know how to set everything up, combine everything. And when something goes wrong, it can be quite cumbersome to find out where the issue is. Is it in your virtualization? Is it an update of your hardware, networking, or storage? So we want to make that easier and combine it all in one. So we combine that top layer. In this case, you have a three-node infrastructure. So we have the hardware, which combines compute and storage, and virtualization running on top of them and combining these all. So this is a three-node system, and the storage is all combined together. 4 focus points. First one is simplicity, ease of use. I already said that, but let's talk about our storage part. So it's pre-configured storage. So when you have your scale computing hardware, you don't need to configure anything. So the storage layer is already pre-configured. So that means that it is one unified management platform, and you can set that up in under 1 hour. So basically, when you did our training online, you would need 30 to 40 minutes to set it up. So really fast to set it up. Second part, availability. Availability is key, of course. You have that. That's with a lot of hyperconverged infrastructure solutions. However, we have also the backup and replication built in with snapshots. And one of the next slides, I will talk more about that specific topic. Scalability, as said, you can go from one single node to 8 nodes in a cluster. And it's built around that scalability with mix and match. That's what we call combining newer CPUs with older models. And then lastly, of course, you have that affordability. So this is something that becomes more and more important. Everyone basically agrees that VMware it's a good product, and a lot of customers were happy with it. They use it maybe for a decade or 2 decades, but it's just not affordable anymore. So they just create one product group where if you don't need certain products, that you basically pay a lot for the only things that you're using. So what we want to do is we want to give our customers a license for the use case. So I said that we have distributed enterprise, small edge use cases, all the way to core data center. So we have different licenses to serve those different needs. Also affordable because we combine everything. We have basically one-stop shop price. The main difference compared to other hyperconverged solutions. So let's say you have the left side model against the right side. So the left side is HP Simplicity, Nutanix, Proxmox with Ceph. They all use a virtual storage appliance. So virtual storage appliance, this one. So a virtual storage appliance is, let's say, an additional layer, a workload or a VM that is running in your infrastructure that makes sure that the hypervisor sees all the storage as one big pool storage, so as a combined storage pool. The big advantage, because there is an advantage for these customers, is that for these vendors is that they were really fast towards the market, and they could combine their software, their storage layer with other hypervisors. Nutanix was able to combine that with VMware, HP as well. So that was the advantage of that model. In our case, which is the right side, our hypervisor is KVM as a base layer. And we took the storage layer out of it and put our own storage layer, so our own IP on top of it. So we don't have an additional layer that virtual storage applies. We don't have it, which makes sure that when you change something in your storage, that the path to do that is way faster because we don't need to communicate between the hypervisor and the virtual storage appliance. Basically, the conclusion here is that it is a more storage efficient model. That's the first part, which will also resonates in how we do snapshots, etc. The second part, and that's also important, is that having that left side, you need resource to run it. The best in class, that is Nutanix, they have 96 gigs of RAM that you would need to run that virtual storage appliance and 12 cores that it consumes. In our case, it's only 4 gigs per node and a fraction of a core. If you have a huge data center, then probably these requirements, they don't matter. However, if you run multiple locations with smaller infrastructure, it's a big difference. Let's compare them all next to each other. The memory requirements, they increase with the amount of storage that you consume. Nutanix, for example, you see where they are, but also VMware. VMware, they're not using a virtual storage appliance model. However, the memory requirements that you need to run hyperconverged, they go up with the amount of storage. This is why we have a strong story in those multiple locations cases where customers maybe only need to run 1, 2, 3 VMs. In the past, no one will look towards hyperconverged because it's just way too expensive and you need way too much hardware to run it. So you could say with scale computing, you can run more VMs on the same hardware, or you can just go with smaller hardware, which is of course important if you have multiple locations, power consumption, the cost of hardware, the footprint, and also not to mention the rack space that you would need. If you look, for example, in shipping or in retail, every square meter is a cost. So if you can put everything on really small hardware, that is a win. So a recap of HyperCore. So HyperCore is combining storage, server, hypervisor. So the typical hyperconverged, and you can run your VDI application or general application, but also for IoT and robo locations. You see on my slide that you also have disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is something that's built into HyperCore and is integrated in the license, so it's no additional cost. Which brings me also to having a resilient system. So what do we do different? So we're looking at data protection. So that first one is that we don't have that virtual storage appliance. Virtual storage appliance, as already mentioned, it consumes resources, but it's also a viability. If you have that additional layer or a traditional model, in our case, that's all integrated in one single layer. Second part is snapshots that can give you a kind of a security. So first of all, we are not a security product. However, we can give you some security features. So we have a really storage efficient snapshot model. And it has to do with how it's built. It's built in the block-based instead of an object-based storage system, which allows us to create thousands of snapshots without performance penalties. If you're used to using VMware, you know that having a lot of snapshots is not a good idea because the snapshot will grow bigger and bigger and bigger until you probably cannot delete it anymore because you need space to do that. In our case, a snapshot cannot grow any bigger than the VM itself. So that is first important. Second one, it is immutable. So meaning, in this case, you cannot change the snapshot. You cannot change the snapshot. And these snapshots can be used, a nice feature of it, you can use a snapshot with a virtual disk from time A combining to a data disk from another time. And this is a really nice use case that I want to mention because we typically get the question, okay, nice, you can create a lot of snapshots, but why would I do that? Because no one is used to do that because a lot of customers are coming from VMware and there you don't use these snapshots. So Zillertaler Gletsjerbahn is one of our customers. Short recap of what they do is they basically are operating a ski resort with everything. So the lifts, the restaurants, the ticketing system, etc. This is one of the only ones in Europe where you can ski all year around. So meaning that they have every day they have revenue streams. A ticket for this glacier or this ski resort is around 50 to 60 euros. So that's quite expensive per person. What happened before summer a couple of years ago, they were hit by a ransomware attack. So their complete point of sale system was out and all their systems. And they were in contact with our support because they thought it was something with HyperCore that was not functioning. However, we noticed together that it was a ransomware attack. Luckily, they had a complete snapshot schedule, creating snapshots on daily basis and even after on regularly hours. We were able to go back to a snapshot of a C drive of months ago when the system was not yet infected, and then put that snapshot back. But of course, the data is not accurate. So then they used another snapshot of that morning, and the data disk of that snapshot, they combined with the older one. This allowed them to be up and running and the ticketing system in just a couple of hours. Of course, they need to do the whole system with using backups to be completely back in order, but at least their ticketing system was back up and running and their critical systems using snapshots. Um, this snapshot technology is also used for disaster recovery in our case. So let's say that you have a production environment, so your main cluster is scale computing, and you have a snapshot schedule. As said, you can create a flexible schedule per VM with all VMs a specific schedule, and you can replicate that to a second site. You can do that as often as every 5 minutes. The distance is not important because we only send change data, and you can replicate one location to a lot of other locations or a lot of locations to one. So it's many to one and one to many. A second site, so these features are built into your license. And then you have a second site, disaster recovery site with scale computing. Um, and you can basically replicate the VMs that you want to replicate, start those replicated VMs when you want to, and you have an RTO of RPO of 5 minutes in this case. When everything is back up and running, we only change the changed data, so it's rather fast to go back to your production site. So that is disaster recovery, which is not the same as backup. So we indeed strongly advise to have their third system, which can be on-prem, somewhere else, or cloud. And you can do that with basically any backup solution that you want to use. However, if you want to have an agentless solution, then we would strongly advise to look at Acronis, Veeam, or Storeware because they fully integrate it with scale computing platform. Again, a summary of HyperCore and scale computing. So we position ourselves for small cases to big core data center, but all at the edge. That's our focus. We have an intelligent storage system, and we don't require virtual storage architecture. You don't need an additional hypervisor. We have KVM as a base layer, and that's built in. And our unique element is that you don't require technical knowledge. So basically, someone who starts as an IT administrator and is 4 months basically in the job after studies, they should be perfectly capable of installing scale computing system. That is HyperCore. Of course, that always runs on appliances. And what are the options with scale computing? So we have basically 3 different options. The first one is we have our own appliances. This is basically where we started with this solution. We have systems for every different use case. So you see really small systems, 100 series. These are based on the NUC systems. And then we have more bigger systems, the 1000, 3000, 5000 series. These are for core data center use cases where we have an all-flash. We have one with a lot of storage. So for every use case, there's a system. We are not a hardware company. That's important to state here. So of course we work with other vendors. If you are curious what's underneath, it is a Lenovo system. These are the NUCs. We have Supermicros. We have Dell. My apologies. Why is it doing that? So
Rene?
Supermicro, Dell, Lenovo.
Philip, sorry, very sorry to interrupt. We are running out of time, so if you could wrap it up, and then we have a few questions for you.
Okay. I'll try to do my best. So we also have a Lenovo track. That's the second one. And we also have software only. So software only allows you to combine Supermicro, Dell, Intel with scale computing platform. I will skip this one for now because a lot of it has been said. Last one is, so you have HyperCore, appliances, and then Fleet Manager. Fleet Manager is a tool, software tool that you will use for if you have multiple locations and basically have that single overview of all your different locations. That is Fleet Manager. It's a cloud platform and it's optional if you have multiple sites. Just going to skip one. So we have this is the last one, and then I will wrap up. So if you're curious in how our licensing model works, so we have, as said, different models. So we have a site license, which is for the small use case, an essential kit for robo locations, and a core license for a bigger one. So we try to have a license for every use case. If you have a certain case, let's have a look together what would be the best fit and what we can offer for that one. Final one, if you're interested, please reach out to the team of Hermitage. We can have a discussion together, but they also have a local demo cluster, so you can play around with scale computing and test it yourself.
Thank you, Philip. Much appreciated. We still have a few more minutes, so we have a question. How are updates and upgrades handled?
Yeah. So in HyperCore, you have basically a single update button where you can click update. So the VMs that are running on one node will migrate to the other one. You do an update of that node, and then the system does the same. So it's all automatically. So the VMs will migrate automatically to another node. Upgrades are done, and the next one.
Wonderful. Yeah, one more. What are the paths to migrate VMs from VMware Hypervisor to Scale?
Yeah. Yeah, so there are different paths. So if you're more technical, you can just export them and import them again. We have services to do that. We can use, these are, for example, Carbonite Move that we use for them, but also with Acronis. Also, if you're, for example, a Veeam user, you can use that with Veeam as well, and we can help you with that. So a lot of migrate paths from VMware to scale computing or any other platform, basically, to scale computing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation.